Good morning and welcome to the Brick by Brick podcast with Ronald Pauleus, where we look at principles and just different things woven throughout our universe that we can take advantage of to build a life worth living brick by brick. Today's President's Day, and I want to share some thoughts and lessons from different presidents we've had. You see, President's Day is one of those holidays that gets reduced to mattress sales and long weekends, but it was never meant to be that. President's Day is about leadership, it's about responsibility, it's about decisions that cost something. Because here's the truth we forget too easily: every president who shaped this country did so by taking a risk. Whether you agreed with them or not, they are in leadership and they took big risk, not safe risk, not calculated risk, or it probably was calculated on their end, but I'm sure they lost way more than they thought they would. Real risk. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because whether you're building a business, leading a family, or just trying to live faithfully, you will never escape risk. The question is not if you'll face it. The question is what kind of risk you are willing to take and for what purpose. So today I want to look at a few presidents who took risk, who stepped into uncertainty, and I want to just highlight how their risk changed the course of America. George Washington probably, and it is my favorite president. The first president, the risk he took was leaving power. You see, Washington had something no other man in the world had at the time: universal legitimacy. He was a general he was a general that defeated the British. He was trusted, admired, feared. And when the Revolutionary War ended, people expected him to rule. People actually were thinking, you are going to be our king. We just revolted against a king, but we want you to be our king. Let that sink in. We revolted so that we can be free. And George Washington was such a great leader, people wanted him to be king. He could have taken absolute power, and history would have justified it. For sure, he freed us from a king across the waters, and we're free. Surely he should be king. He could have justified it himself. After all I've sacrificed, I've earned this, almost losing my life. But instead, he did something completely radical. He resigned his commission, went home. After 2 terms of presidency, he stepped away and set a precedent that followed for years. That decision was a massive risk. Why? Because no one knew if the experiment of democracy would survive without him. There was no precedent. It was being set, no safety net, no guarantee the nation wouldn't fall apart. But Washington understood this. Power that refuses to release itself eventually becomes tyranny. And so by stepping away, he set the precedent that the office mattered more than the man. That single risk, walking away from power, is probably one of the most important leadership decisions in American history. And I think what it teaches us is that there are times we got to walk away. And it challenges us to build something we know that will outlast us. There's so many leaders who build stuff that's contingent on them. Their name's on the billboard. If I'm not here, it doesn't go. People want to meet with me. But the challenge of leadership It's to build an organization. It's to build a dream. It's to build a vision. It's to craft a ship that continues to sail without you being the one guiding it. Our founding fathers, they gave us the Declaration of Independence, and they set what we believe as a nation, and then now they're not here. They built something that would outlast them. George Washington being that first president, such a great leader, set that in such a way that even though it could have no doubt fallen without him leading, he said, I'm going to take the risk, and we're going to test what I've built to see if it keeps going without me. Abraham Lincoln is the next president I want to talk about. He led during the darkest moment in American history. The country was tearing itself apart. 11 states seceded. The pressure to compromise was immense, and many of his advisors urged him to let the South go. Others pushed him to preserve peace at any cost, even if it meant allowing slavery to continue. But Lincoln chose neither comfort nor consensus. He chose conviction. The Emancipation Proclamation was not a popular decision, wasn't even guaranteed to work. It risked alienating border states, prolonging the war, risked his presidency and his life, and it did cost him his life. But Lincoln understood that some risks are moral necessities. There are moments when neutrality is not wisdom, it's cowardice. There are moments when delay is not patience, it's disobedience. He was bound to be true. And he was. He signed those documents that freed hundreds of thousands of people and has marked our nation with one of the greatest speech. And so he eventually lost his life for what he believed in, what he stood for, what he communicated, how he led our nation. But he's helped us to live up to what our nation has believed in through the Declaration of Independence, through our rights. And he risked it. And it teaches us that there are some things worth risking your life for. In fact, if you don't have something you could die for, the argument could be made, you're not living for anything that's truly worth it. Theodore Roosevelt risked also. He believed that comfort was dangerous. Stagnation was the enemy of greatness. And so he challenged monopolies when it made powerful enemies, regulated industries when it upset wealthy elites, and he pushed conservation when others saw land only as profit. Roosevelt understood leadership means distribution. Progress often requires confrontation. And leadership, it upsets a lot to people. But sometimes you got to lead the people with the necessary amount of frustration they can handle. Looks like sometimes saying no when it would be easier to say yes. Much, much easier, even sometimes standing alone. Franklin Roosevelt, FDR, took office during the Great Depression, and banks were collapsing, unemployment was staggering, hope was evaporating. The pressure to wait was intense, to study more, move cautiously. Instead, he acted, he pushed forward. Not every program worked, some failed, but he pushed on, and he understood that in moments of crisis, inaction is its own form of failure. I think he teaches us that overthinking does not protect you. Hesitation does not preserve opportunity. And action is something you just got to take sometimes. Harry Truman, he inherited a war already in progress, and his decision to drop the atomic bomb remains one of the most controversial in history. Regardless of where you are, I think we can say he bore the weight of a decision that could not be delegated. So many leaders, the one of the challenges of building a business, growing in capacity, growing in a way that is healthy, one of the key components of it is delegation. Getting an assistant, getting someone to handle this and handle that, letting someone else take care of a job that you know you could do better. President Reagan one time was getting ready to give a speech, and he looked at the speech, and they say he said he could have written a better speech. But that speech was good enough, so he was just going to go do it. He was just going to use it. And I think what we got to realize is that we, in leaders, face delegation, the task of delegation. And sometimes it means letting people do stuff you know you could 100% do better on and better with. But it is better if you focus your energy on other important, weightier items. Truman bore the responsibility, bore that decision that couldn't be delegated, couldn't be delayed, couldn't be undone. The buck stops here. And he did it. And now, Japan is one of our most greatest allies. You see, risk becomes unbearable when leaders refuse to carry it. And it's the families, it's the nations, it's the businesses, it's everyone under you that ends up feeling the burn. What I want to communicate is whether, I know there's nuance for every of these presidents I mentioned. There's presidents I have not mentioned, the last 5 of this, up until now. There's so many things I could say, so many things I won't. But here's the point I want to highlight is you can go through every presidency and find something worth emulating. You can find something worth highlighting, something worth looking at and saying, okay, that's a characteristic, that's an attribute that I would actually want to mirror, that I actually would want to have, because it communicates something on a deeper level. Like I said, presidents, whether you agree with them or not, whether you're on the side that voted or voted against, they bear a weighty responsibility. And it is easier to mock and point fingers when you are not in the seat of decision making. And that's being real. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't critique and give our feedback. I look back and I can see things that should not have been done. There are studies coming out, especially during the COVID era, where leaders and people are sharing regrets of doing this and taking that course of action and making that decision. The leaders are coming out saying that. And then there's a research on the impact on kids and adults, just the whole nine. Here's my point. There's only so much we can do. And what you need to be able to do is rise up to the occasion to be a leader in your own life and in your own situation. You see, President's Day isn't about perfection. It's about courage under pressure. And I said earlier, we all take risk. You're saying, no, I'm staying at my W-2 and I'm doing my own thing, or I'm not actually going to build that dream. And we're all taking risk. You're taking the risk by staying at your job that it's going to be here in the next 5 to 7 years with all that artificial intelligence is doing. It's totally fine. But I know January's job report loss has been the highest it's been since 2009 January. You know what came before 2009? You know what happened in the last 2 quarters of 2008? Yeah. Everyone's taking a risk. You just have to say to yourself, is this a risk I'm worth taking? And if I don't get my outcome, is it that okay? And if the risk ends up biting me, is that okay? You could let your dollars stay in a savings account, totally fine. Money market, totally fine. But with inflation, you do the math. I started to realize I'm losing money keeping it here. Everyone's taking risk. It's just sometimes you got to say to yourself, as I've said to myself, I want to take risks that have a better upside. A lot of these presidents, they've paid with their reputation, their legacy, even their lives. But get this, history, it doesn't honor the safe. It honors the faithful. It honors the courageous. And let me leave you with this. If you're waiting for certainty, you'll wait forever. If you're waiting for unanimous approval, you'll never move. If you're waiting until fear disappears, you've actually already lost. See, progress has always belonged to those willing to step forward before the outcome is guaranteed. Brick by brick, decision by decision, risk by risk. And so, I hope you can enjoy President's Day. You're probably on a beach somewhere, probably having a good time doing a barbecue. But let this sit with you. What risk are you putting off that you should be taking? And what spear should you be pushing forward with courage? What life are you wanting to build brick by brick? What steps, what decisions are you making to start building that life?